without further ado, we're going to bring on our first guest, Bonnie Newman Davis. And I want to tell her we appreciate your patience. We rarely have technical difficulties, but
it happens
when it's a live show, it happens sometimes. So, Bonnie, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's great. Yeah. I'm always looking for a break, and I've been working all day. So this is, good.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this will be an enjoyable break for you.
It's the time we just have a conversation with our guests. And what I noticed about your bio is that your upbringing, matriculation, and all of that is all in my neck of the woods.
Oh, really? North Carolina?
Yes.
Where?
Well, I'm from Newport News, Virginia.
Right.
So I know you. You're the managing editor of the Richmond Free Press.
Yes, exactly.
So, and that's only 60 miles from Newport News.
Right.
And then my sister went to Bennett College.
Oh, okay.
My brother-in-law went to A&T, where they met while they were in college. And so, and Virginia Commonwealth, you were just, I have friends from high school that went to VCU.
Okay.
So you're all over.
Where are you located now?
Houston. I've been in Houston for a minute.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize.
But all of my upbringing, all of my extended family is in North
Right.
Carolina. I'm the only one in Texas.
Okay.
And I'm about 3 hours away from you. I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Oh, wonderful. Right up the road. Yep.
Right.
Good old 95 North or 495 or 395.
Yes.
Goes up and down the East Coast. Well, you came to our attention because of your, I guess it's your latest book, but the book we wrote called Truth Tellers.
Yay!
Oh, and you have a copy of it. And it's about the power and presence of Black women journalists.
Yeah.
Since 1960.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
What made you focus on women journalists as a topic for a book?
Well, several reasons. Number one, I've long been affiliated with the National Association of Black Journalists. I've served as a chapter president. I founded a chapter here in Richmond. I was regional director. And I think it mainly came to my attention when I was the NABJ Journal editor, which was the quarterly magazine. And noticed in editing and writing for the journal that most of the features and profiles tended to focus on Black male journalists, which was great, because they definitely need their props and to be recognized. And so I got to interview Ed Graves with Black Enterprise Magazine, Dean Barquette, who just left the New York Times as executive editor, and just a whole host of different lovely Black men. Lerone Bennett, who was with Ebony Magazine, of course.
Right.
But at the same time, there was, just something kind of stirring in my head saying, where are the women? Were the Black women journalists, because I knew that some had been president of NABJ, such as Dorothy Gilliam, who's in my book, and Vanessa Williams, and just several other outstanding Black women. So that really put the idea in my head. Plus, I was teaching in academia at VCU, as you mentioned, and one of the things that teaching involves in a university setting is, writing, publish or perish, if you've ever heard that expression.
Yeah.
And so I was about to perish, of course, and and writing is what I've done since, for the past 40 years. And so that's what made me jump on that idea, and that was back in 2006, I think it was. Plus, I'd also taught a course that involved Black women journalists, such as Ida B. Wells, Dorothy Dunnigan, Alice Dunnigan, I may have her name incorrect. And so I'd learned a lot about these women, Ethel Payne, As a matter of fact, I was an Ethel Payne Fellow, received a fellowship with the National Association of Black Journalists. And so I was able to travel to Africa, visited Ghana, because that's what the fellowship does. So, I mean, writing a book, it was just all in me, deep in my soul, and started actively writing about it or interviewing in 2015. This was several years later. And once I did that, it took me another few years in terms of actually sitting down to write it. And that was with the onset of the pandemic. So, I didn't have any more excuses at that point. I had to get busy. And
So are these interviews with well, I know you probably
People
weren't
with different Black
able to interview
women.
all of them. So I'm sorry.
No, go on.
No, I was saying, I know you weren't able, you may not have been able to interview all of them, like for instance, Ida B. Wells, but but
No.
did you interview some of the later people?
Yes, well, let me think. Everyone in my book, they were interviewed. And most of them came into mainstream newsrooms starting in the 1960s. Okay. And we all know that history in terms of majority newsrooms being mostly white. There were certainly Black journalists, such as Ethel Payne and the others that I mentioned, but they were with the Black press. So with the onset of the Civil Rights Movement, and later in 1968, the Kerner Commission report, which President Johnson commissioned that report because after all of the racial riots that started maybe 1965 and continued up until Dr. Martin Luther King's death. And certainly there were other race riots prior to that, but it had gotten to the point where many leaders, civil rights leaders, were calling for something to be done. And so with the Kerner Commission reports released in 1968, 2 months before Dr. King passed, it was stated that we were living in an era of two societies, one Black, one white. And it was deemed that the American media had a lot to do with it. One, because they had not done an effective job of letting people know, when I say people, mostly white people, know about the situation that so many Blacks were living in, and which were at the heart and root of a lot of the anger and everything else that occurred with these riots throughout the summer in major cities. And even in the South, there were, protests. And we often heard about what was going on in Detroit, Chicago, New York, and other places, but there were actually cities in some of the southern states too where this was happening. And some of the women in my book, they can recount and recall many of the protests that occurred. So yeah, that's really when, to answer your question about some of the women, there are 24 different women in the book.
Okay.
And I interviewed the majority of them, at least 15 to 16. I knew quite a few of the women from NABJ and from having worked with them. And Cassandra Spratling, for example, we were in graduate school together at the University of Michigan. And so she had worked for, I believe, the paper in Grand Rapids, Michigan. She worked in maybe Iowa one summer. But I always admired her so much because she was so passionate about going back to Detroit and becoming a reporter for the Detroit Free Press. And she was just very dogged and determined. And we were Booth scholars. We received full rides to attend the University of Michigan. So we didn't have to pay anything, and which was great.
Yeah, that's always good.
Yeah, that is always
That was a good thing. I don't still, in need of money because I like to go, at every opportunity. But anyway, I say that to say that I just admired her. Well, one thing was that we were supposed to go to a booth newspaper to work as part of the deal. So, I worked for the Ann Arbor News during one summer, and she worked probably, I don't know where she worked, but we both broke the rule when we graduated, and I came to Richmond, and she got a job in Detroit. And she stayed there up until maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 years now. But she just, loved her some Detroit. And that just gave me a lot of admiration and respect for that, because I didn't want to go back to Greensboro, even though I did eventually to teach at my alma mater, A&T. But I was always a bright lights, big city, kind of person. I just wanted to experience, the highlights. And so I wanted to come to Houston because I'd come to Houston when I was at A&T. Back
Well,
then,
that was when we had 2 newspapers, most likely.
yeah,
The daily.
yeah,
daily.
NABJ was in Houston one year. It was great.
Yes, it was.
And just all sorts of things. But I ended up in Richmond. It was pretty close to home. I had a few relatives here, and I'd read in Black Enterprise that it had Black leadership here in Richmond. And as it turns out, my senior year in college, that's when I really discovered Blacks in the political system. I took a wonderful course, and that just sort of opened my eyes to, a lot. My senior year, but it was enough. And so when I was at Michigan, I studied, my minor was African American history. Yeah, African American history. But always, I've always been interested in politics and Black leadership since then.
And I think that's really where I've seen a lot of Black women journalists shine, is in the political arena.
Yeah.
They know how to tell a story, and they're not afraid to ask the hard questions.
That's right. Particularly in broadcast journalism. And
yes.
So many more of us now in that realm. And it's just amazing. It's really great.
Yeah. So does your book have a good mixture of people in print media?
Yes, it's mainly print.
Okay.
The women in the book mainly come from print backgrounds, but diverse in terms of location and the various jobs that they worked, or beats that they covered. You have former executives such as Deborah Hurd, who worked for the Washington Post, and Wanda Lloyd, who was with USA Today, and Dorothy Gilliam, of course. She's a long-time columnist. Who else? We have.
What about Charlene Hunter Galt? Is she in your book?
No, I didn't get Charlene, and I wanted to. She was definitely on my list, along with Isabel Wilkerson, who was on my list, and
April Ryan. April Ryan.
I'm sorry.
April Ryan.
April. You know what? April's book came out maybe a year or so before mine.
Oh, okay.
And that's the thing too, the deciding factor, because a lot of these women have books of their own. Paula Madison, who was in broadcast but started out in print, I believe in Texas. I really wanted to include her, but that's the beauty of the book, because I can always expand and go on and do
a volume 2.
Well, yeah, I think what the beauty of the book is that people like April Ryan, they have a platform. They've been around. A lot of people know who they are. I think your book is actually able to give some other people a voice and a platform that they may not have had before. Yeah,
well, I certainly hope so. It was definitely a labor of love, and I learned so much. Reading the book. I learned a lot about myself. I think it has definitely helped me, because when I wrote it, I was not working full time. And so then to be tapped to come back into journalism full time as a managing editor for a Black owned weekly newspaper in Richmond.
Richmond Free Press?
Richmond Free Press, yes.
So,
So just, with their stories like resonating in the back of my mind, I'm just, certain things about leadership and management and working with different personalities and, just all those things. I can hear those women's voices telling me how they approach different things, such as Pamela McAllister Johnson, who was first Black woman publisher of a mainstream newspaper in this country. She was publisher of the Ithaca Journal. And after she left that paper in Ithaca, New York, she went on to various other fields and endeavors, but she ended up teaching at Western Kentucky University, actually leading that journalism department. So here's the thing. When I was still in undergraduate school, Pamela came to my university and spoke to us as students. She was teaching at Norfolk State then. So full circle, had not seen her for some 30 years, and I went to Western Kentucky as part of a group of journalists or professors, Black professors, and there was some sort of workshop, and it just warmed my heart when she said, "I remember you."
well, you know what? Let's not look over the fact that you have opened up some doors for a lot of young journalists as well. You've been in the field for 4 decades. You're teaching journalism. So you're opening up a lot of doors as well. So I appreciate that. What a lot of people don't know is that I'm a former journalist as well, but I did military journalism.
Oh,
so
wow.
when I was in the Army,
yes,
that was my job to take photos, to write stories. We had our own newspapers. My last assignment in the military was with American Forces Network.
Okay.
Yeah, so
wonderful.
Good. So I did dip my big toe into journalism. I just didn't. I just stayed on the PR side instead of the journalism side when I got out.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, they're well regarded, well respected. I know a lot of people built their careers starting with military journalism and coming out and going straight into a newsroom. So I commend you. Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Now,
and I thank you for what you're doing.
Little toe in it too, but mostly as a op-ed writer. Like I wrote op-eds for many years. I had a column in USA Today, a monthly column for 4 years, but I did mostly op-ed. I did a little, straight.
Yeah. Well, anytime you want to write for the Free Press, just let me know. You don't
I haven't done one in a long time, in a while. Well, it's probably been 10 years or so since I did it. I mean, I could still do it if I wanted to. I had 1 or 2 pieces in the Detroit Free Press.
Oh, wonderful.
This was back during, it was related to when Obama ran for president.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, speaking of the Free Press and Cassandra again, in my book, her story, she talks about of course, meeting Rosa Parks, who moved to Detroit, but also the march in Selma, and no, it was either Selma, I think it may have been Montgomery, Alabama, going back after 50 years and speaking with some of the participants in that march and interviewing them. And it's just a very, very poignant story when she talks about how she could have cried, hearing one of the women talk about how her feet were just, how she was able to, she had to soak her feet in Epsom salt after marching continuously.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. I can imagine.
So what do you think is, what do you think women bring to news in terms of point of view, perspective that's different? Black women in particular.
Black women in particular. I think they are able to see the hidden layers of certain stories. And of course, the whole thing about us being more nurturing and caring and sensitive and all of that. And I think that makes a big difference in, the overall art of storytelling. Yeah. And, perhaps a little bit more patient
I think the storytelling piece of it is so huge because we know how to tell a story. We tap into that griot tradition and we bring it into the newsroom, and some of the most poignant documentaries are either by or about Black women.
Ava, is a good example.
Yes.
And so many others who are rising up for sure. So yeah, and the beauty is that we have so many who have come up since the 1960s and continuing to come. And that speaks volumes, because it's not an easy field. As you know, nothing is easy, but I think what we do, because you sacrifice so much. I mean, there are days when even now, I can't talk to people if I'm on a deadline.
I'm with you on that one.
And speaking of editorials, I mean, I would love to write more opinion pieces and things like that, because I have plenty to say, but you have to know what you're talking about. You have to research, you have to verify, and
Right.
fact
You can't just be mouthing stuff off. You have to have some facts. Whatever you're mouthing off, you have to be able to support it with that.
Because people will check you. So,
yes.
That's part of
unfortunately, we've come to the end of the half hour. I know we started a little bit late, but I wanted to give you time to remind us where we can find your book and how we can connect with you.
Okay, sure. I have a website, BonnieNewmanDavis.com, and there is a page where you can order the book there, but I'm also on Amazon. And, if you have my number and you call me, I can mail you a copy.
All right, now don't tempt them all the time now.
Right. I usually have some on hand here, but it's just, you can get a signed copy. But Amazon for sure. And I hope that audiences will, the viewership tonight will purchase the book and read it. More importantly, read it.
Yes, we did put the link in the chat though, so everybody can tap on the link right now and order this book. I mean, this is history that's still in the making. A lot of these women are actually still in the newsroom, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's incredible. When I had a book session in Charlotte recently, so there are 3 women from Charlotte who are in the book, even though they may have worked in different places: May Israel, Fannie Flono, and Patrice Gaines. Patrice probably is the most famous because she used to work for the Post, and she wrote a book years and years ago, Dancing in the Dark, Laughing in the Dark. But they're still working. They stay busy. They have ministries. They have, clients that range from whomever and whatever that, serve them well, because with their level of expertise, they probably can command pretty much any fee that they want. And so the job, there's a lot of sustainability in it. If you are blessed to live and retire and be free to accept some of these opportunities, or not. If you want to be like me and aspire to a beach home, become a beach bum, you can do that too.
Well, Bonnie, show the cover of your book again, so people can know when they're looking, they know. It's called Truth Tellers. And the subhead is The Power and Presence of Black Women Journalists Since 1960. Thank you so much for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV.
Wow. Well, thank you. And I look forward to joining you again. I hope that you all have a great evening.
And you do the same. God bless you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.